Jungkook's on-camera humiliation shocks fans. But when Jimin laughs, the real storm begins. Netizens erupt in unexpected fury. "Stop the camera," Jungkook said, his voice low, almost breathless, cracked like thin ice under pressure. But it was too late. The red light on the camera was still blinking, and Jimin, standing just a few feet away, was laughing. The studio fell silent in a heartbeat, the kind of silence that sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Bright studio lights cast sharp glares on the sleek floor of the set. The gleaming table in front of them, once prepped for a casual, light-hearted interview with BTS, now felt like a witness stand in a courtroom. Producers behind the scenes exchanged nervous glances through the glass panel, but no one dared intervene. Every second ticked like a countdown to something none of them could undo. It was supposed to be a nostalgic segment, a playful recap of their early debut days, something for their fans to laugh about. The host had pulled up an old clip, a blurry 2014 fan cam of Jungkook dancing off-beat during rehearsal. It was harmless. Or at least, it should have been. But then the host added a cruel twist. "Now this clip," he chuckled, pausing dramatically. "This is where Jungkook earned the nickname Bambi with no rhythm, right?" Even the staff couldn't stop laughing. Jungkook's smile had tightened, just slightly, barely visible to someone who didn't know him. But Jimin saw it. He always saw it. Yet instead of stepping in, instead of cutting the tension, Jimin chuckled. Not a nervous chuckle, not even an embarrassed one. It was loud, clear, a burst of unfiltered laughter that cut through the room like a blade. And that was when Jungkook said it. "Stop the camera." His voice didn't tremble, but it carried something darker, wounded pride, a plea, a threat, something buried too long that had suddenly cracked open in front of millions. But the camera didn't stop. The segment continued, and Jimin's laugh echoed in every fan's living room, across every phone screen, from Seoul to Sao Paulo. When the broadcast ended, it didn't take long. Within minutes, Jimin laughing began trending on X. By the 20th minute, Respect Jungkook had overtaken it. The comments were brutal. One user wrote, "That wasn't just a joke, that was humiliation." And Jimin laughed like it meant nothing. Another said, "He could have defended him. He always defends him. What changed?" But no one knew what had really changed. Not yet. Back in the dressing room, Jungkook sat alone. His jacket was still half off his shoulders, clinging to him like a metaphor he didn't want to face. The makeup artist had left silently. No one had spoken, not even the staff. The door creaked open. It was Jimin. He stood there for a moment, framed by the hallway lights. No words, just silence. Then he stepped in and closed the door behind him. "I didn't think it would hurt you," Jimin whispered. It was just a clip. We've laughed about worse." Jungkook didn't answer. His gaze was locked on the mirror, watching himself instead of Jimin, like even his own reflection felt foreign now. "Do you remember what they called me in high school?" Jungkook asked suddenly. Jimin blinked, confused. "What?" "Choreographer's regret. That's what they called me. For months, I told you that. You knew that." The air turned heavier. Jimin's posture stiffened. "I wasn't laughing at you," Jimin began. "You were..." Jungkook cut him off, voice cold. "And they were too. And now the world is." For the first time, Jimin's face dropped into something raw guilt, maybe. Or was it confusion? Regret. He reached out, hesitated, then let his hand fall to his side. "You always handle jokes. You've always been the strongest among us," Jimin said, his voice shakier now. "Why is this different?" Jungkook turned to him. "Because it was you." That sentence didn't need elaboration. It hit like a closed fist between them, because it was true. There were years behind that sentence. Unspoken expectations, shared trauma, mutual comfort, the kind of bond that only brothers in war or fame shared. But the moment had ripped through it like wildfire. "I need air," Jungkook muttered and brushed past Jimin. He didn't storm out. He didn't slam the door. That would have been easier for Jimin to process. He just walked away. That was what hurt the most. Outside the building, the paparazzi were already waiting. But Jungkook didn't flinch at the flashing lights. He walked straight through them, eyes dark, face unreadable. Inside the studio, Jimin was still frozen in the middle of the dressing room. His phone buzzed, notifications lighting up in rapid succession. Comment after comment. Video edits already up. Proof. Jimin mocked Jungkook. Jimin's laugh. A turning point? He swiped through them like they were knives. He never realized how loud his laugh sounded until it was weaponized. Somewhere across the city, Taehyung was watching too. He had paused the video just after Jungkook's face changed. He didn't need to see more. He tossed his phone onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. "Idiots," he muttered to no one. "You don't do that to each other." Back online, the narrative was no longer just about a clip. It had become about betrayal. It had become about the cost of a laugh. And the one person Jimin could always run to wasn't picking up the phone anymore. He tried again. Still no answer. Jungkook had gone dark. Silent. Offline. And in that silence, the world began to speak louder than ever. The hallway outside Jungkook's apartment was unusually quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't come from peace, but pressure thick, invisible pressure that built up in the air like static before a lightning storm. A single distant elevator chime echoed down the corridor, but Jungkook didn't look up. He was sitting on the floor, back against the door, legs stretched out like a man who had forgotten what he was supposed to do next. Inside the apartment, his phone lay face down, buzzing endlessly on the kitchen island with message after message he refused to read. He hadn't gone online for almost 36 hours. Not because he didn't care, because he cared too much. The video clip of the laugh Jimin's laugh had looped through his mind on repeat more times than it had gone viral. And it had gone viral. Brutally viral. Netizens weren't just angry. They were dissecting every second of the moment. The way Jungkook's eyes flicked sideways. The way Jimin tilted his head as he laughed. Even the way his hands didn't reach out, didn't touch, didn't stop the moment from becoming what it became. Traitor, some called him. Others went deeper. Is this what he really thinks of Jungkook? Was it all fake? The hashtags twisted like knives. Jimin canceled. Protect Jungkook. Not so golden young. But no amount of public sympathy was helping Jungkook. Because it wasn't the world he was hurt by. It was Jimin. And that made the silence unbearable. His fingers twitched. He looked toward the kitchen counter. The phone still blinked. Jimin had called 6 times. Then 10. Then he stopped. Taehyung had only called once. He didn't call again. He didn't need to. The knock came softly at first, then harder. Jungkook didn't move. Another knock. Followed by a voice. "It's me, Taehyung." Jungkook closed his eyes. A pause. Then the sound of the key turning in the lock. He should have changed it. The door opened, slow and careful. Taehyung stepped in, dressed in all black, like he'd come to a funeral. He spotted Jungkook on the floor and didn't say anything at first. Just closed the door behind him and slid down the wall until he sat beside him. Silence again. But this one was different. Not heavy, not sharp. It was the kind of silence old friends carried between them. The kind that didn't need decoration. "You look like hell," Taehyung muttered finally. "Thanks," Jungkook replied, voice gravelly. Another beat passed. "You've got 2 million fans declaring war on Jimin right now," Taehyung added. "They're carving up every video you've ever been in together. Turning every laugh into a dagger. Every hug into betrayal. Some are saying, he's always been jealous of you. Some are saying you've been too forgiving." Jungkook didn't reply. "You're not going to say anything? What do you want me to say? That you're angry. That you're hurt. That you're not okay." "I'm not okay," Jungkook said, more to the wall than to Taehyung. "But it's not their business." "Then why do you keep watching it?" Taehyung snapped. Jungkook looked up. "Yeah," Taehyung continued. "Don't think, I don't know. I know you. You've replayed that video so many times, you've memorized the exact moment your face changed. The moment his eyes didn't soften. The moment he didn't protect you." Jungkook's breath caught. "I didn't think it would hurt this much," he admitted quietly. "I mean, I've been teased before. We all have. I've laughed it off before. But not this time. No, not this time." "Why?" Jungkook turned to him. His eyes, usually bright and alive, were dull like they'd been drenched in something too heavy to lift. "Because it wasn't just a laugh. It was like he forgot everything. Like I wasn't someone who needed protecting. Like I was just the punchline. The pain in his voice was raw. It hung between them, undeniable. Taehyung ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I told him it was a mistake," he muttered. "Right after the segment aired. I told him it wasn't just a bad joke. It was betrayal." Jungkook flinched at the word. "Do you think he meant it?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. "No," Taehyung said firmly. "But that doesn't mean it didn't happen." The silence stretched again, but this time, Jungkook broke it. He laughed, Tae, like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Taehyung's jaw clenched. "To fall on my knees and cry for forgiveness? Because I will if that's what it takes to prove I didn't mean it." Jungkook's face didn't move. Jimin's eyes searched him, wild and desperate. "You think I wanted that to happen? You think I enjoyed watching everything we built burn because of one stupid clip?" "You didn't stop it. I didn't know I needed to." Jungkook's voice dropped, low and cold. "That's the problem." Jimin's expression shattered. A door creaked open somewhere behind them. A manager cleared his throat awkwardly. "They're waiting for you both." Neither moved. The manager hesitated, then left. Jimin finally exhaled. "I miss you." Jungkook's jaw flexed. "You miss what we used to be, not what we are." Jimin shook his head. "You're wrong. I miss you. The real you. The one who used to call me in the middle of the night just to send a stupid meme. The one who covered for me when I missed rehearsal. The one who held my wrist so hard when I panicked before an award speech that I had bruises the next day." Jungkook looked at him for the first time. "I miss him too," he whispered. The air between them went still. Then Jungkook turned and walked away. Jimin didn't follow. He didn't need to. Because he knew something had shifted. Not healed. Not forgiven. But something had changed. And maybe, just maybe, that meant there was a road back. The next day, Jimin did something no one expected. He released a handwritten letter to fans. No company PR, no stylized background, just scanned, raw, written with visible shakes in the lines. In it, he said he had failed his friend. He said fame had made him forget how fragile people could be. He said the laughter wasn't meant to hurt, but it did, and that made it his responsibility. He didn't defend himself. He didn't justify. He just confessed. The internet reacted with chaos. Some called it brave, others called it performative. But it didn't matter, because that night, Jungkook read it in the dark. And for the first time in a week, he didn't feel angry. He felt seen. When the group met again to rehearse for an upcoming live performance, Jimin arrived first. Jungkook arrived last. As they all stretched and warmed up, Namjoon gave a tired speech about professionalism. Hoseok cracked a joke no one laughed at. Yoongi turned off his phone and asked everyone to shut up. But when the music finally played and the group moved as one, there was a moment brief, barely visible, when Jungkook turned slightly. And Jimin was already looking. Their eyes locked. And they didn't look away. The dance was tight, the moves sharp, the synergy not yet perfect. But for the first time since the laughter, they moved together. And maybe that was enough for now. The lights inside the concert dome dimmed to a low throb, vibrating through the air like a heartbeat that had just been startled into silence. Outside, tens of thousands of fans screamed in deafening unison, a sound that surged like ocean waves crashing against the steel skin of the arena. Inside, behind thick velvet curtains and heavy anticipation, BTS stood in formation, seconds away from stepping into the blaze of a spotlight that had never felt so sharp. This was the first group performance since that moment, since the laugh, since the silence that followed, since the fans had taken sides and torn the internet in half, since Jimin's letter, since Jungkook's decision to say nothing at all. Now, they were about to walk onto a stage that had always been theirs, but tonight, it felt foreign, unfamiliar, rigged like a trap. Every single movement, every eye twitch, every footstep between Jimin and Jungkook would be magnified under the scrutiny of millions watching not just for music, but for a fracture, a fault line, a public explosion. In the darkness backstage, Jimin rolled his shoulders, trying to shake off the static building in his spine. Hoseok noticed and gave him a subtle nod. Not approval, not encouragement, just acknowledgement. That was all he could give. Across the narrow prep space, Jungkook adjusted the mic pack clipped to his back and didn't look at anyone. He hadn't spoken to Jimin since the rehearsal. Not a word. Not even when they brushed shoulders in choreo. Not even when Jimin tripped once and Jungkook instinctively caught him by the elbow, only to let go the second he realized what he'd done. There was distance now, measured in steps, in seconds, in silences. And yet they were about to step into one of the most intimate performances they'd done in years. Because tonight's set list had been chosen months ago, long before this mess. And the final number? It was their song. Not a group anthem, not a solo. A duet. Stay. The lights flared. They walked onto stage. The roar was blinding. Camera flashes lit up like sparks in a storm. Screams of joy. Chants of names. Weeping fans with glowing army bombs pulsing in rhythm filled the air like sacred ritual. BTS waved, smiled, took formation. And for a moment, it felt like it used to. Then came the final act. The stage cleared. The music changed. And Jimin stepped forward. Alone. Soft piano notes swirled through the air like cold mist. The intro to Stay began slow, aching, familiar. The crowd hushed. Then Jungkook stepped out from the opposite side. Every eye in the room widened. They hadn't performed this song together since the last Seoul Dome finale. Fans knew what it meant, or thought they did. Jungkook's voice started first, low and melodic, his tone slicing through the silence like a blade dipped in sadness. "Where are you?" "I'm right here." Jimin's voice followed, gentler, strained. "But you're further than ever." They circled each other slowly on stage, like two planets caught in opposing gravity. Close, then distant, eyes never meeting. The choreography was subtle but symbolic, reaching hands that almost touched. Backs turned at key beats, breaths drawn but not released. It was beautiful. It was tragic. And then it exploded. Midway through the song, during a close duet harmony, a screen behind them suddenly flickered. It wasn't part of the show. No one had programmed it. The tech crew scrambled. Too late. A clip started playing behind them. It was that clip. Jungkook's face. The laugh. The moment it all fell apart. And it was live, projected on a 70-foot screen behind their backs, in front of 60,000 people. Gasps erupted in waves. Jimin froze. Jungkook turned. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, they just stared at the giant screen as if they couldn't believe their own eyes. Then chaos. The song cut out. Lights flared into confusion. Jimin spun toward the crew at the side of the stage, mouthing, "What is happening?" as tech staff ran to kill the feed. Jungkook didn't move. He just stood there watching it. Again. In front of everyone. One of the backup dancers tried to rush forward, but security halted them. Fans began shouting, some confused, some angry, some crying. The screen finally blacked out. But the damage was done. Jungkook took a breath, then stepped forward to the mic. "Keep the lights up," he said. The crew hesitated, but the arena lights stayed on. He turned to face the audience. "Not Jimin. I think you all deserve a real moment," he said. His voice was calm, clear, steady. People screamed his name. He raised a hand, silenced them. "I've been silent for a while," he said. "Not because I don't care, but because I didn't know what to say. Or maybe I was afraid that if I said something, I'd never be able to stop." His voice cracked slightly. "I was hurt, and I didn't hide it well. You saw that." The crowd murmured, hanging on to every syllable. "But what you didn't see is that Jimin and I have been through hell together. Literal hell. We've bled on the same stages, slept on the same floors, starved through the same months of no success. He's been the first person to know when I was drowning." He turned slowly, faced Jimin. Jimin's face was a mask of disbelief. Eyes rimmed in red, hands shaking. "So when he laughed," Jungkook said, voice quieter now, "it felt like a knife, because it wasn't just anyone. It was him." You could hear someone sobbing in the crowd. Jungkook stepped closer. "But I forgot something," he said. "I forgot he's human too. That he panics. That he makes mistakes. That not every silence means betrayal. And not every laugh is a weapon." Jimin was now openly crying. Jungkook held out his mic to Jimin. The crowd lost it. But Jimin didn't speak. Not right away. He looked at Jungkook, at the fans, at the stage that had just turned on him, then at the mic. And when he took it, his hands were trembling so badly it echoed through the mic. "I've been scared every day since that moment," he said. "Not because of what people said, but because of what I knew I'd done to you. I laughed at the wrong time. I didn't protect you, and I've hated myself every single day for it. The tears fell harder now. But even after that, you stood here tonight and reminded me why you're the best person I've ever known. He paused. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to earn it anyway. Then he bowed, deep, full, painfully slow. Fan screamed. Jungkook walked forward and pulled him upright, and for the first time in weeks, he hugged him. A real one. Tight. Unapologetis. The lights dimmed again. The music restarted. They performed Stay from the second chorus. Together, with raw voices, cracked harmonies, and damp cheeks. And the world forgave them both. But what they didn't know, what none of them saw, was who had hacked the concert visuals. And why? Because far from the stage, in a cold office under HYBE headquarters, a laptop screen glowed quietly. The name of the employee logged in was someone none of them suspected. And they had plans, big ones, because the war wasn't over. It started with a text message no one expected. Namjoon sat alone in the conference room on the 12th floor of the HYBE building, scrolling through schedules and press statements, when his private phone lit up with a number he hadn't seen in months. The name displayed on the screen was one they all thought they'd never have to see again. Yoon Sungmin, former head coordinator of BTS's early-era wardrobe team, fired 2 years ago under ambiguous circumstances, something about breach of conduct and mishandling media files. No one asked too many questions at the time. But now, he had returned. And the message was simple. The video wasn't leaked. It was planned. You're being watched. Meet me off record. Bring no one. Namjoon stared at the screen, heart suddenly pounding. He reread the message 5 times before locking the phone and rising from the table. His reflection in the window looked tense, older than he remembered. He grabbed his coat without a word and walked straight past 2 staff members trying to hand him documents. They called after him, but he didn't turn back. By the time he reached the basement garage, rain was hammering the pavement outside. Sungmin had sent a location pin. It wasn't a cafe. It wasn't a bar. It was a quiet rooftop parking deck in a forgotten industrial zone near the Han River, the kind of place used for backdoor deals in movies only tonight. This wasn't fiction. Namjoon arrived just after midnight. The lights above the concrete rooftop flickered, casting long shadows over his face as he stepped into the open. Sungmin was already there, sitting on the edge of the barrier wall, cigarette smoke curling around him like a ghost from the past. He looked thinner, worn down, but his eyes were still sharp. Too sharp. You came alone, he said. You said to. You trust too easily, Sungmin smirked. No, Namjoon replied. I just don't scare easily. Sungmin laughed, a hollow sound. They still have you playing PR puppet? What do you want? Justice. For what? For being buried alive while the real snakes keep their jobs. Namjoon crossed his arms. You're the one who leaked personal images of staff and nearly destroyed the company's internal credibility. Sungmin shook his head. That's what they told you. Namjoon didn't respond. Sungmin leaned in. Do you think it's a coincidence that the most humiliating moment of Jungkook's career was projected at the precise moment his and Jimin's emotional bond was healing publicly? Namjoon's expression hardened. Do you know who runs the visual systems at your shows now? Sungmin asked. Our live tech team. Wrong. He tossed a flash drive toward Namjoon. Namjoon caught it. Everything's on there. Emails, transfer logs, IP trace routes, internal staff IDs. One of your own gave the order to insert the clip into the live feed. Namjoon's jaw clenched. Why? Sungmin looked straight at him. Because they want to break them. Who? Hiba. Namjoon took a step forward. You expect me to believe our own company sabotaged us? Sabotage them? Sungmin didn't blink. Not the entire company, but someone high up. Someone who thinks Jungkook and Jimin have too much influence. Someone who's threatened by loyalty stronger than contracts. Namjoon felt the air go still. They think if they divide them, they control them. Sungmin said, voice soft now. And they almost did. Namjoon turned to leave. One more thing, Sungmin said. Check Jimin's contract. What? The amended one. The version he signed last winter. Page 12, paragraph 5, line 3. Namjoon didn't ask questions. He just left. By the time he arrived back at HYBE, it was nearly 2 a.m. The building was dark. Security didn't question his presence. He still had authority clearance. He bypassed the elevators and used the executive staircase. He didn't pause until he reached the legal archive room, pulling open the cabinet labeled BTS Renewals. He found Jimin's file, pulled it, flipped to page 12. His finger slowed. Paragraph 5, line 3. He read the clause once, then again, and his heart sank. In events of unforeseen public backlash involving member conflict or reputational controversy, exclusive decision-making rights regarding damage control and PR representation revert to designated HYBE oversight authority, including but not limited to content censorship, platform suspension, and schedule redistribution. This clause remains confidential to the signees and is not subject to third-party disclosure without written consent. Namjoon sat down. He realized something. That clause meant HYBE had pre-approved authority to control how Jimin was portrayed, even override his public access, even release media in the name of damage control, including emotional clarification footage, including that video. He stood up and whispered one word: bastards. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the team gathered for a scheduled shoot for an international fashion magazine. Jungkook arrived first, coffee in hand, sunglasses shielding the fatigue in his eyes. Jimin was already there. They didn't speak, but they didn't avoid each other. The tension had simmered down to something quieter, now less volcanic, more like a dormant fault line. It was fragile, but real. Namjoon entered last, holding the folder in his hand. He didn't greet anyone. He waited until they were in the private waiting lounge, and then he locked the door behind him. "We have a problem," he said, laying the file on the table. Jungkook and Jimin both looked up. Taehyung sat upright. Yoongi raised an eyebrow. Namjoon didn't waste time. He opened the file, pulled out the clause, and handed it to Jimin. Jimin scanned the lines. His hand began to tremble. "This means they can," he whispered. "They already did," Namjoon said. "They greenlit the footage insertion. They approved the segment mock-up. They manipulated the script of the interview from 3 weeks ago. The host didn't improvise anything. It was fed to him." Silence hit the room like a bomb. Jungkook leaned forward. "You're saying that laugh moment was engineered?" "No," Namjoon said. "The laugh was real. The setup was real. But the stage was set long before you walked into that studio. They knew what clip to use, what to say, when to zoom, and they knew Jimin would react. Jimin looked like he was going to be sick. Taehyung stood, pacing. "They turned us into puppets." Yoongi finally spoke. "Why?" Namjoon's voice lowered. "Control." He pulled out the flash drive and connected it to his laptop. Files opened. Email threads between senior executives, flagged media items, an entire log titled Narrative Risk Protocol, BTS Unit Overshadowing Management Authority. He looked at Jimin and Jungkook. They were afraid of your closeness. Jimin stared at the screen like it was betraying everything he thought he knew. Jungkook leaned back, arms folded. "They wanted the world to believe we were falling apart," he said. "They wanted to make it true," Namjoon corrected. Jimin whispered, "We need to go public." Namjoon shook his head. "Not yet. If we do it wrong, we burn everything, including our contracts." Taehyung slammed his hand against the wall. "So we stay silent?" "No," Yoongi said. "We plan." Jungkook stood. "For the first time," he said quietly, "I don't want to protect the system. I want to expose it." Jimin looked at him, and for the first time, they didn't see pain. They saw purpose. The next 48 hours moved like a war strategy. Quiet meetings, coordinated posts, a carefully scripted joint interview with neutral international press. Every word practiced, every phrase deliberate. And then they did the unthinkable. They released a video, together. No makeup, no studio, no HYBE logo, just a phone set on a table. The two of them sitting side by side. Jimin spoke first. "There's something we need to say. Together, unfiltered." Jungkook followed. "You've seen things, heard things, assumed things. But the truth is, some of it wasn't us. It was about us, but it was not from us." They spoke for 13 minutes. They didn't name HYBE. They didn't name the clause. But they didn't need to. The implications were enough. The reaction? Immediate. Shockwaves. Headlines erupted across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Fans united. Protect BTS trended in over 80 countries. Major outlets demanded HYBE respond. And inside HYBE's top floors, Panic. Because for the first time, the narrative wasn't theirs to control. The story belonged to the boys again. And it was just getting started. Rain fell like glass outside the massive windows of the press hall. The sky above Seoul was choked in gray, thunder rumbling just beneath the clouds like something angry and unspoken. But inside the building, the air wasn't heavy with weather. It was heavy with truth. The marble-floored media center at the International Art Culture Center had been closed off for one reason. Not a film premiere, not an award show, a press conference, called by Jungkook and Jimin themselves. Not Hybe, not PR, not legal teams. Them. And that was enough to start a fire. Security was tighter than a government summit. Dozens of journalists had been hand-selected, and each one signed strict NDAs. Still, rumors leaked faster than ink. BTS was going to speak. Not about music, but about betrayal. In a private dressing room just above the hall, Jungkook stood alone by the window, watching the rain slide in crooked lines across the glass. He was dressed in black, head to toe. No jewelry, no styled hair, just presence. Behind him, Jimin sat on a low bench, fingers tapping nervously against his thigh. He wore a gray suit, slightly loose on him, as though he'd lost more weight than the stylists realized. His eyes were shadowed from too many nights of reading comments and memorizing silence. It started with a text message no one expected. Namjoon sat alone in the conference room on the 12th floor of the Hybe building, scrolling through schedules and press statements, when his private phone lit up with a number he hadn't seen in months. The name displayed on the screen was one they all thought they'd never have to see again. Yoon Sungmin, former head coordinator of BTS's early-era wardrobe team, fired 2 years ago under ambiguous circumstances, something about breach of conduct and mishandling media files. No one asked too many questions at the time. But now, he had returned. And the message was simple. The video wasn't leaked. It was planned. You're being watched. Meet me off record. Bring no one. Namjoon stared at the screen, heart suddenly pounding. He reread the message 5 times before locking the phone and rising from the table. His reflection in the window looked tense, older than he remembered. He grabbed his coat without a word and walked straight past 2 staff members trying to hand him documents. They called after him, but he didn't turn back. By the time he reached the basement garage, rain was hammering the pavement outside. Sungmin had sent a location pin. It wasn't a cafe. It wasn't a bar. It was a quiet rooftop parking deck in a forgotten industrial zone near the Han River, the kind of place used for backdoor deals in movies only tonight. This wasn't fiction. Namjoon arrived just after midnight. The lights above the concrete rooftop flickered, casting long shadows over his face as he stepped into the open. Sungmin was already there, sitting on the edge of the barrier wall, cigarette smoke curling around him like a ghost from the past. He looked thinner, worn down, but his eyes were still sharp. Too sharp. You came alone, he said. You said to. You trust too easily, Sungmin smirked. No, Namjoon replied. I just don't scare easily. Sungmin laughed, a hollow sound. They still have you playing PR puppet? What do you want? Justice. For what? For being buried alive while the real snakes keep their jobs. Namjoon crossed his arms. You're the one who leaked personal images of staff and nearly destroyed the company's internal credibility. Sungmin shook his head. That's what they told you. Namjoon didn't respond. Sungmin leaned in. Do you think it's a coincidence that the most humiliating moment of Jungkook's career was projected at the precise moment his and Jimin's emotional bond was healing publicly? Namjoon's expression hardened. Do you know who runs the visual systems at your shows now? Sungmin asked. Our live tech team, Rang. He tossed a flash drive toward Namjoon. Namjoon caught it. Everything's on there. Emails, transfer logs, IP trace routes, internal staff IDs. One of your own gave the order to insert the clip into the live feed. Namjoon's jaw clenched. Why? Sungmin looked straight at him. Because they want to break them. Who? Hiba. Namjoon took a step forward. You expect me to believe our own company sabotaged us? Sabotage them? Sungmin didn't blink. Not the entire company, but someone high up. Someone who thinks Jungkook and Jimin have too much influence. Someone who's threatened by loyalty stronger than contracts. Namjoon felt the air go still. They think if they divide them, they control them. Sungmin said, voice soft now. And they almost did. Namjoon turned to leave. One more thing, Sungmin said. Check Jimin's contract. What? The amended one. The version he signed last winter. Page 12, paragraph 5, line 3. Namjoon didn't ask questions. He just left. By the time he arrived back at Hybe, it was nearly 2 a.m. The building was dark. Security didn't question his presence. He still had authority clearance. He bypassed the elevators and used the executive staircase. He didn't pause until he reached the legal archive room, pulling open the cabinet labeled BTS Renewals. He found Jimin's file, pulled it, flipped to page 12. His finger slowed. Paragraph 5, line 3. He read the clause once, then again, and his heart sank. In events of unforeseen public backlash involving member conflict or reputational controversy, exclusive decision-making rights regarding damage control and PR representation revert to designated Hybe Oversight Authority, including but not limited to content censorship, platform suspension, and schedule redistribution. This clause remains confidential to the signees and is not subject to third-party disclosure without written consent. Namjoon sat down. He realized something. That clause meant Hybe had pre-approved authority to control how Jimin was portrayed, even override his public access, even release media in the name of damage control, including emotional clarification footage, including that video. He stood up and whispered one word: bastards. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the team gathered for a scheduled shoot for an international fashion magazine. Jungkook arrived first, coffee in hand, sunglasses shielding the fatigue in his eyes. Jimin was already there. They didn't speak, but they didn't avoid each other. The tension had simmered down to something quieter, now less volcanic, more like a dormant fault line. It was fragile, but real. Namjoon entered last, holding the folder in his hand. He didn't greet anyone. He waited until they were in the private waiting lounge, and then he locked the door behind him. "We have a problem," he said, laying the file on the table. Jungkook and Jimin both looked up. Taehyung sat upright. Yoongi raised an eyebrow. Namjoon didn't waste time. He opened the file, pulled out the clause, and handed it to Jimin. Jimin scanned the lines. His hand began to tremble. "This means they can," he whispered. "They already did," Namjoon said. "They greenlit the footage insertion. They approved the segment mock-up. They manipulated the script of the interview from 3 weeks ago. The host didn't improvise anything. It was fed to him." Silence hit the room like a bomb. Jungkook leaned forward. "You're saying that laugh moment was engineered?" "No," Namjoon said. "The laugh was real. The setup was real. But the stage was set long before you walked into that studio. They knew what clip to use, what to say, when to zoom, and they knew Jimin would react." Jimin looked like he was going to be sick. Taehyung stood, pacing. "They turned us into puppets." Yoongi finally spoke. "Why?" Namjoon's voice lowered. "Control." He pulled out the flash drive and connected it to his laptop. Files opened. Email threads between senior executives, flagged media items, an entire log titled Narrative Risk Protocol, BTS Unit Overshadowing Management Authority. He looked at Jimin and Jungkook. "They were afraid of your closeness." Jimin stared at the screen like it was betraying everything he thought he knew. Jungkook leaned back, arms folded. "They wanted the world to believe we were falling apart," he said. "They wanted to make it true," Namjoon corrected. Jimin whispered, "We need to go public." Namjoon shook his head. "Not yet. If we do it wrong, we burn everything, including our contracts." Taehyung slammed his hand against the wall. "So we stay silent?" "No," Yoongi said. "We plan." Jungkook stood. "For the first time," he said quietly, "I don't want to protect the system. I want to expose it." Jimin looked at him, and for the first time, they didn't see pain. They saw purpose. The next 48 hours moved like a war strategy. Quiet meetings, coordinated posts, a carefully scripted joint interview with neutral international press. Every word practiced, every phrase deliberate. And then they did the unthinkable. They released a video, together. No makeup, no studio, no Hybe logo, just a phone set on a table. The two of them sitting side by side. Jimin spoke first. "There's something we need to say. Together, unfiltered." Jungkook followed. "You've seen things, heard things, assumed things. But the truth is, some of it wasn't us. It was about us, but it was not from us." They spoke for 13 minutes. They didn't name Hybe. They didn't name the clause. But they didn't need to. The implications were enough. The reaction? Immediate. Shockwaves. Headlines erupted across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Fans united. Protect BTS. Trended in over 80 countries. Major outlets demanded HYBE respond. And inside HYBE's top floors? Panic. Because for the first time, the narrative wasn't theirs to control. The story belonged to the boys again. And it was just getting started. Rain fell like glass outside the massive windows of the press hall. The sky above Seoul was choked in gray, thunder rumbling just beneath the clouds like something angry and unspoken. But inside the building, the air wasn't heavy with weather. It was heavy with truth. The marble-floored media center at the International Art Culture Center had been closed off for one reason. Not a film premiere, not an award show, a press conference, called by Jungkook and Jimin themselves. Not HYBE, not PR, not legal teams. Them. And that was enough to start a fire. Security was tighter than a government summit. Dozens of journalists had been hand-selected, and each one signed strict NDAs. Still, rumors leaked faster than ink. BTS was going to speak. Not about music, but about betrayal. In a private dressing room just above the hall, Jungkook stood alone by the window, watching the rain slide in crooked lines across the glass. He was dressed in black, head to toe. No jewelry, no styled hair, just presence. Behind him, Jimin sat on a low bench, fingers tapping nervously against his thigh. He wore a gray suit, slightly loose on him, as though he'd lost more weight than the stylists realized. His eyes were shadowed from too many nights of reading comments and memorizing silence. There were no cameras yet, just the truth waiting to break free. "You don't have to do this," Jungkook said, still watching the rain. "I know. You really don't. I know, Kook." Jungkook turned around. "But we are," Jimin added quietly. Jungkook stared at him. "Together?" Jimin nodded. "Always." That word landed like a stone in both their chests. A knock on the door interrupted them. Namjoon entered with slow, cautious steps. He looked exhausted. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbow, the veins in his forearms prominent as he held a folder tight in his grip. "They're ready," he said. No one moved. "I need to say this before we walk in," Namjoon added. "Whatever happens in the next 2 hours, it changes everything. If you say the names we agreed on, there's no undoing it. You know that, right?" Jungkook nodded. Jimin didn't. He stood up instead and walked toward him. "Do you think we should stop?" Jimin asked. Namjoon looked at them, long and hard. Then he said, "No." The walk to the stage was silent. No staff, no cameras, just the three of them. Shadows flickering against the polished hallway walls, boots echoing down marble as if fate were announcing their every step. When they stepped into the blinding lights of the media floor, the crowd erupted in clicking shutters. Microphones were already live, cameras streaming across multiple platforms. People all over the world leaned into their phones and monitors. Jimin and Jungkook sat. Namjoon stood behind them, arms folded like a silent guardian. The MC, a junior representative from an unaffiliated PR firm, cleared his throat and simply said, "They'll speak now. No questions until the end." Jungkook reached first. He adjusted the mic. His voice was steady, low, but clear enough to cut across oceans. "I never thought we'd have to sit here like this, but here we are." He took a breath. "Over the past month, things have been said. Videos have been shown. People have speculated. And we, Jimin and I, have been accused, defended, insulted, and turned into something we're not." Jimin looked at the table. "Not hiding, just waiting." Jungkook continued. "I stayed quiet because I didn't know what to say without hurting anyone else. But then something happened. Someone tried to break us in public. Tried to make it look like we were enemies, like we didn't care about each other." He paused again, and it worked for a while. Jimin finally looked up. "When Jungkook was humiliated on camera, I laughed," he said. And that laugh hurt him. It hurt more people than I realized. I've apologized, privately and publicly, and I've meant every word. He leaned forward slightly. "But the part no one told you is why it happened." Reporters stirred. "We found out that the clip, the questions, the timing, none of that was random," Jimin said. "It was built, set up, authorized." Jungkook spoke again. "We have evidence that a segment of our company specifically A senior executive at HYBE authorized and engineered media content meant to discredit the unity between Jimin and me. Jimin added, they wanted to fracture the image, not for scandal, not for gossip, but for control. The room fell into silence. No clicking, no typing, just raw air. They didn't count on us putting the pieces together, Jungkook said. They thought we'd fall apart quietly. Jimin's voice cracked slightly. They underestimated what we've survived together. Then came the moment that shattered everything. Namjoon stepped forward and placed a printed document on the table. It was a contract. Highlighted. He picked up the mic. In this contract, Clause 5.3 gave HYBE the right to edit or manipulate media narratives in the event of member conflict. This clause was inserted into renewals without full contextual disclosure, which means legally they made it nearly impossible for members to challenge public portrayals that weren't true. The words burned. One journalist couldn't hold it in. So you're accusing your own company of weaponizing your relationship? Jungkook didn't flinch. Yes, Jimin leaned in again, and we're not the only ones. There was a pause. Then, the second explosion. A woman stood up in the back of the room. She was not on the guest list. She wore a black mask, a hoodie, and trembling hands. Security moved. Namjoon raised a hand. No, let her speak. The woman removed her mask. Gasps. It was Choi Min-kyung, former social media manager. Resigned abruptly 2 years ago. She walked to the front and held up a USB. I have proof. Internal emails, memos, voice notes, and a call recording between a senior HYBE executive and the variety show's producer. The words used to describe Jungkook and Jimin were dehumanizing. Jimin covered his mouth. Jungkook stood. The USB was handed to Namjoon. In the back, security had stopped trying to intervene. The press conference became a storm. Jimin leaned into the mic one last time. This is not just about us. It's about every artist who has been told to smile through manipulation, to dance through humiliation, to shut up for the sake of contracts. He turned to Jungkook, then back to the press. We're done being quiet. Jungkook echoed. We're done. And the microphones went silent. But the world was just waking up. The wind that morning carried no peace, not through the crowded streets of Seoul that pulsed with tension, not through the windows of the high building where whispers grew louder than footsteps, and certainly not through the apartment Jungkook now sat in, alone, shoulders hunched, fists clenched on either side of his phone. His name was everywhere, not just his. The video of the press conference had gone viral again, but this time, the reactions were far from unified. Some fans hailed Jungkook and Jimin as brave, even heroic. They praised their honesty, their vulnerability, their refusal to stay silent. But others weren't as kind. Accusations began to trickle in. They were ungrateful, too emotional, destroying BTS's legacy. Air dirty laundry and you stain all of us, one headline sneered. It wasn't the public's anger that made Jungkook tremble. It was the silence from inside. From HYBE, no formal response, no denial, no apology, just silence. And it was terrifying. He didn't hear the door open behind him, but he knew who it was before he looked. Taehyung's voice was low. You saw it too, huh? Jungkook didn't answer. Taehyung walked over and dropped a manila envelope onto the coffee table. Got this an hour ago. No sender, just slid under my door. Jungkook stared at it. You opened it? I did. And? You need to see for yourself. Jungkook picked up the envelope slowly, as though it might burn him. He pulled the tab open and slid out the contents. Photos, printed emails, voice transcripts. One line jumped out immediately. Let them destroy each other. The public will do the rest. He blinked. There were names attached, and one name stopped his breath. Kim Seokjin. Jungkook felt like the floor had fallen from beneath him. It couldn't be. Seokjin was family. Hyung, big brother, the protector. The one who made sure they ate when schedules were too full. The one who used laughter as a weapon to shield them from reality. Taehyung sat across from him, expression unreadable. It doesn't make sense, Jungkook whispered. I know. I don't believe it. I didn't either. Jungkook's fingers gripped the transcript tighter. What is this even saying? That Jin signed off on the media strategy that humiliated us? Taehyung's silence was the loudest confirmation of all. Jungkook stood, pacing, breath shallow. Why would he do that? He's not even active. He's serving. He's still in the loop, Taehyung interrupted. Still on the board. No, Jungkook muttered. He wouldn't. He wouldn't. Taehyung's voice grew sharper. He did. Jungkook turned to face him, eyes wild with disbelief. You don't know that. Taehyung got to his feet, slamming a hand on the table. He sold us out, Jungkook. Maybe not for money, maybe not even out of hate. But he's part of this, and we can't keep pretending we're safe. Jungkook's throat tightened. He walked to the balcony, pushed the door open, and let the wind hit his face. The city stretched far below, cold and indifferent. It had given them everything, and it was now ready to take it back. Behind him, Taehyung lit a cigarette, inhaling deeply. You should talk to Jimin, he said finally. Jungkook didn't turn around. Why? Because he already knows. Those words knocked the breath from his lungs. You mean he knew before the press conference? No, Taehyung said. He found out last night. The envelope came to his door first. Jungkook spun around, eyes burning. And he didn't tell me? He was trying to confirm it. And you believe that? I did. Did he? Taehyung met his gaze. You'll have to ask him yourself. Jungkook didn't wait. He left without grabbing a jacket. By the time he reached Jimin's apartment, he was breathless, not from the climb, but from the storm inside him. He knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. Jimin looked like he hadn't slept. He wore an oversized hoodie and eyes red from something deeper than tears. When he saw Jungkook, he didn't speak, just stepped aside. Jungkook walked in without a word. The living room was dark, curtains drawn. A cup of untouched tea sat cold on the table. An envelope, another one, lay torn open beside it. You knew, Jungkook said flatly. Jimin nodded. Last night. And you didn't tell me? I wanted to, but you didn't. Because I wasn't sure what it meant yet. What it meant? Jungkook laughed bitterly. It means the one person we trusted most put the knife in. We don't know that, Jimin snapped. You think I want to believe this? That Suk Jin-hyung would approve something like this? He did. It's his name, his voice, his signature. I've known him since I was 17, Jungkook. He's taken care of us through hell. This, Jimin gestured wildly at the documents. This doesn't feel like him. Jungkook's voice dropped. But it is him. Jimin exhaled slowly, pain painting every inch of his face. I was going to tell you tonight. You should have told me the second you found out. I was trying to protect you. No, Jungkook said. You were trying to protect him. The words struck deeper than either of them expected. Jimin looked down. You think I'm still choosing him over you, he said softly. I think you haven't figured out who you're loyal to anymore. Silence. Jungkook turned and walked toward the door. I'll find out the truth, he said, with or without you. He slammed the door behind him. Jimin sat down slowly, burying his face in his hands. Back at Hybe headquarters, the senior board was in a frenzy. The press was demanding official responses. Legal teams were fighting over who held responsibility. A small faction within the board, the ones exposed by the leaked documents, were desperately trying to shift blame onto middle managers. But one person wasn't in panic. He was watching quietly. Kim Suk-jin sat in a private military office just outside Busan, phone turned off, news playing silently in the corner. He picked up a small, locked case from the drawer, opened it. Inside, a high board access tablet. He turned it on. His finger hovered over a folder labeled Conflict Resolution, Group Strategy. He didn't open it. He just stared. Behind him, a junior officer called out, Sir, you're due at briefing. Jin turned off the tablet. I won't be long. He stared at the window. Rain was beginning to fall. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Seoul seemed to be mourning something the public couldn't fully understand yet, as if the city itself sensed that something sacred was unraveling. The headlines had grown louder, more venomous, even as fans fought to shield BTS from the chaos. But the silence from Hybe's top floor had become deafening, and silence had always been more dangerous than words. Jungkook hadn't slept in almost 48 hours. His phone was full calls, texts, emails. Namjoon had tried twice. Hobie had sent voice notes laced with worry. Taehyung had come to his apartment twice, but left when the door wasn't answered. But Jungkook wasn't avoiding them. He was waiting. Waiting for the one person who hadn't spoken at all. Not a single message from Seokjin. Not one word since the files came to light. Not even a Danielle. And that silence cut deeper than the video, deeper than the setup, deeper than the laughter. Jimin had called that morning. Jungkook didn't pick up. The pain was no longer hot. It was cold now, heavy, settled into his bones like winter. He sat in a dim rehearsal room at one of the off-site HYBE training facilities. Alone. No music. No movement. Just memory. He remembered Jin's voice when he told him to stop pushing so hard during training. Remembered the late-night ramen runs. The stupid jokes that pulled him back from the brink more times than he could count. He remembered how Jin looked at him during their first group win, the way his eyes shined like a proud older brother. Now those eyes were a question mark. He was still staring at the floor when the door creaked open. He didn't look up, but he recognized the footsteps. They were slower than usual, heavier, more deliberate. Then he heard it. Hi. It was soft, tentative, still unmistakably Jin. Jungkook didn't move. The door closed behind him. Silence stretched. I was hoping you'd hit me, Jin said finally. Or scream, or something. Jungkook still didn't look at him. Why would I do that? Because I deserve it. You do. Pause. Jin walked further into the room. I didn't think it would go that far, he said. That it would actually hurt you. Or Jimin. Jungkook turned his head slowly, finally meeting his eyes. You mean it was real? Jin didn't answer. That was enough. You knew, Jungkook said, standing. You knew they were planning that segment. You let them go through with it. You signed the approval. It wasn't like that. You signed it, Hyung. I thought it was harmless. Humiliation is harmless? Jin's jaw clenched. I thought it was a PR strategy, to reset tension. They told me it was just narrative tweaking. Something to give the group a refresh. Jungkook's laugh was hollow. Narrative tweaking? You turned me into a joke in front of millions. You turned Jimin into a villain. I didn't know they'd run it that way, Jin said quickly. I didn't know they'd insert the video into the concert, or cue the host with that specific line. I swear to God, Jungkook, if I had known, you didn't ask. I trusted them. You didn't trust us. That silence cut deeper than any scream. Jin stepped back, like he'd been slapped. Jungkook stared at him. All these years you told us to trust you, that you'd protect us, that we were brothers. We are. No, Jungkook said. Not anymore. Jin's face cracked. You don't mean that. I do. You're angry. I'm betrayed. Then hit me, Jin whispered. Hit me if you need to. Just don't say we're not brothers. Jungkook took a step forward, and then another. For a second, Jin tensed, expecting the punch, but it didn't come. Jungkook reached into his back pocket and pulled out the printed transcript of the media clause. Highlighted, signed. He held it out. Jin stared at it, then slowly took it. I'm not going to hit you, Jungkook said. But you'll read that, every word. And then you'll live with the fact that the moment I felt most alone in this world was signed off by you. Then he walked past him, left the room, didn't look back. Jin stood there, shaking. Later that night, Jimin was waiting at Jungkook's door. He didn't knock. Jungkook opened it before he had to. I saw him, Jungkook said. Jimin didn't ask who. I told him it was over, he added. Jimin stepped inside. He said he didn't know how far it would go. Jungkook whispered. Jimin nodded. They never do. Jungkook looked at him. Really looked at him. How long have we been doing this, he asked. Since we were kids. I don't want to do it this way anymore. Jimin's voice was quiet. Neither do I. Jungkook sat on the couch. His body felt like a map of bruises no one could see. Jimin joined him, curling one leg underneath himself. I've been thinking, Jimin said, about what would happen if we walked away. Jungkook didn't flinch. If we left the label, Jimin continued. If we started something else, something not controlled by fear. You mean, leave BTS? Jimin shook his head. No, never. BTS is us. We don't leave us. But maybe we leave them. Jungkook leaned back. Do you think they'd let us? They can't stop us, Jimin said. Not anymore. Not with what we have. Not with what the world knows now. There was a long silence. Then Jungkook said, "Would you do it?" "If I did?" Jimin looked at him. "I already decided." Jungkook's eyes shimmered with something fragile. Hope. Maybe fear. "Then we burn the contract," he whispered. Jimin smiled. Together, always. The next day, they announced an emergency press live stream. No script. No press release. Just them. When the screen lit up, over 14 million viewers tuned in within the first 5 minutes. Jungkook and Jimin sat side by side. No suits. No makeup. Just eyes that held too many sleepless nights. Jungkook spoke first. "This will be our last official live under Hybe," Jimin continued. "We're not disbanding. We're not ending BTS. But we are walking away from something that stopped being safe." Jungkook added, "We're building something new, from scratch. No executive board, no media control, no censorship." Jimin's voice was steadier than it had been in months. "We're choosing honesty over image, love over control, freedom over fear." The live stream broke global records. Fans didn't protest. They stood up. They marched in every major city with signs that read, "Protect the core, Jungkook free, and BTS owns BTS." Back at Hybe, chaos. Board resignations. Internal audits. Whistleblowers came forward. And Kim Seokjin? He submitted his resignation that night. Then he called Jungkook. Jungkook answered. "I read it," Jin said. "I know. You were right. I didn't want to be." Silence. "I'm sorry," Jin whispered. Jungkook closed his eyes. "So am I." The line disconnected. Sometimes love doesn't need to end to be broken. But sometimes the pieces build something stronger. Jungkook and Jimin walked away. But they didn't walk alone. They walked into something new. Something terrifying. Something finally theirs. And for the first time in years, the storm outside didn't scare them. Because the real storm had already passed. The morning after the live stream was different. Not because the world changed overnight, but because Jungkook and Jimin had. They woke up not in a dorm, not in a studio, not in the cold shadow of a boardroom contract, but in a small, borrowed apartment on the edge of Seoul with peeling paint on the window frames and silence they could finally call their own. The floor creaked when Jungkook walked barefoot to the kitchen. The air still smelled like burnt toast from the night before. Jimin hadn't even bothered to clean the mug he broke when he tried to pour boiling water with shaking hands after the live stream, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that they'd survived the hardest decision of their lives. But freedom. Freedom was not quiet. It was loud, crashing, screaming, especially when it was stolen from the hands of giants. Hybe responded in 36 hours.